Now, we've been talking a lot about immigration rates, and I think it's going to, well, overwhelm the public debate between now and whenever the next election is. And the ABS released the quarterly immigration figures today, and we've just added another 173,000 people to the country. In a quarter. 173,000. Now, Australia's population is already growing at 2.5%, and that is much higher than other comparable Western countries. And it's not growing because we're having more babies. We're having far fewer babies at a rate far below the replacement level. So the increase in Australia's population almost entirely comes from immigration. But here's the thing. We've got a ballooning NDIS, a ballooning aged care sector, childcare subsidies that the government can't afford, an overwhelmed hospital and Medicare system, and nowhere near enough houses to support the current population. For every immigrant that came to Australia over the last calendar year, we built one house to every 4.5 new Australians. Does that maths add up to you? Well, Liberal Senator Dave Sharma, he's took quite an extraordinary step, really, in calling for a pause or a halt or a significant curtailing in immigration. And he's on the line live. Senator, appreciate your time.
Great to join you, Chris.
So why immigration for you, given your background?
Look, I support migration to Australia, and, my dad was a migrant to Australia, and I think it's made our country a great nation, but it needs to be sustainable. And at the moment, as you just illustrated with those figures, we are not building enough new homes for our increase in population, which is overwhelmingly coming from new immigration. And until we can get on top of that, if we take more people, all it's going to do is push up the price of housing even further, put more pressure on our infrastructure, and make homes unaffordable or even more unaffordable for younger Australians. I mean, this first and foremost, we need to be looking after the Australians we've got here, and then we can look at being, how many immigrants we can be taking. But we're clearly failing to build enough new homes for our current population, never mind expanding it even further.
Well, what's your plan then? What should be the plan of the Liberal National Opposition? How many should we be taking?
Look, I'm not going to pull a figure out of the air right now, but I think if you look at the 18 months to December last year, we took in about 900,000 new arrivals. Now, in that time, the Australian population, through births and deaths, the net natural increase rate, if you like, was about 150,000. So we've got about a little over 1 million new Australians in 18 months, right? And over that time, we built about 230,000 new homes. Now, on average, you need one home for every 2.5 people. So we are way out of the ratio that we need, and all that is doing is putting pressure on housing. So I think we need to get on top of our housing challenge and our housing supply challenge, and until we do, we need to have migration back to a much more normal level. Like what
does sustainable look like? Is it thousands, tens of thousands?
No, I think it's probably, look, traditionally we've probably taken somewhere between 150 and 250,000 immigrants a year. That's a sort of normal number for Australia. What we've seen in the last year or two has been an extraordinary number, a very high number.
Is that just an overflow from COVID, given that we had the drawbridge up during the pandemic, we had labour shortages, and we had industry after industry crying about not being able to get a hold of staff? Albanese gets in, lets a whole bunch of people in to fill those vacancies, and now we are where we are.
Look, there's certainly some pent-up demand, to come to Australia after COVID, but that neglects the fact, this isn't, we're in control of our borders. We can decide how many visas we issue each year, how many student visas, how many work visas, how many permanent migrants we can take. The government is ultimately in control of this migration intake, and I think we need to be prioritising the building of new homes and infrastructure before we reach for the migration lever. And the reason the government's doing this, the economy is only growing at the moment because more people are moving here, but no one's living standards are improving because people's per capita income is going backwards. So migration is effectively masking a very weak economic performance at the moment. And that's what we need to get to grips with, rather than papering it over by bringing in more people, which bumps up our absolute numbers. We need to be addressing the problems that people are facing in their everyday lives, cost of living, cost of housing, home affordability, those sorts of things.
Before I let you go, do you concede that for Peter Dutton and the Liberal Party and the National Party to be elected, you probably do need to give Australia a figure of what you're proposing?
Well, I think we will, and I think we'll develop those policies, closer to the election. I know that work is underway right now, and, but it will need to be a figure that is better anchored in our capacity to build new homes and build new infrastructure and make sure that homes become affordable again. I'm comfortable that
Have you got a personal view on that? Have you got a personal view on what figure would be anchored in reality?
Look, I don't, Chris, because I haven't done the detailed work that would be required to reach that view, but I know that people are doing that work, and it would be irresponsible of me to just throw out a ballpark figure. But I would say that the current figure is way too high.
But you're not. Are you proposing a suspension of immigration or a pausing, full stop of immigration?
No, I'm proposing a reduction in the numbers of migrants we take each year.
Dave Sharma,
significant reduction.
Well, I appreciate having the conversation because Australians are certainly having the conversation, and I think it needs to break through into public debate, and I don't think it helps anyone having a discussion. When people have these conversations, all of a sudden fingers are pointed, oh, you're racist, you're racist, you're racist. No, we're realists. That's what it is.
No, exactly. And I don't think Australia will ever stop being a generous country to migrants, but we need to make sure that migration is working for us as a nation, and that's what this conversation should be about.
Senator, appreciate your time.